The mirror didn't lie, but she wished it would. Elani stared at her wrinkled reflection, the face of an old woman she'd worn for 8 years like a prison. Then the clock chimed midnight. Her skin smoothed, youth flooded back, and there, the queen she used to be stared back at her with those same haunted eyes. But he was standing in the doorway, Alpha King Noah. His breath caught as he saw her transformation, hand still gripping the mirror's frame. Who are you? 8 years of hiding, 1 moment of truth. Everything changed that night. Chapter 1. The forest path twisted through darkness, and Elani moved through it like a shadow. Her hands, wrinkled, spotted with age, clutched a small velvet pouch containing moonstone powder. Every joint ached as she picked her way over roots and stones, but she'd learned to ignore pain years ago. The disguise Mortessa had given her came with more than just an old woman's face. It came with an old woman's frailty. The cottage materialized through the trees, its windows glowing with sickly green light. Elani pushed through the door to find Mortessa waiting by the fire, her angular face half-shadowed. The witch was beautiful in a cruel way, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that held centuries of bitterness. "You took longer than expected." Mortessa's voice carried both warmth and ice. She rose and crossed to Elani, fingers trailing through her gray hair with surprising gentleness. "My clever girl. Did anyone see you?" "No one ever sees me." Elani held out the pouch. "The moonstone powder, as you requested." Mortessa took it, then cupped Elani's weathered cheek with one hand. The gesture might have been maternal if not for the calculating gleam in her eyes. "You're learning, finally becoming useful instead of the pathetic creature who stumbled to my door 8 years ago, weeping over a man who threw you away like garbage." The word stung, but Elani had learned not to flinch. Mortessa always did this, offered affection with one hand while twisting the knife with the other. "Women like you." Mortessa turned away, examining the moonstone powder by the firelight. "Pretty soft women who think batting their eyelashes will make alphas worship them. You learned the hard truth, didn't you? That beauty means nothing when a man decides you're disposable." Elani's mind drifted back unbidden to the grand halls of Silver Peak Castle, to the mate bond she'd once believed was sacred. Alpha Vorin had been handsome and cold, their union arranged by their families to strengthen political ties. For 3 years she'd tried to reach him, preparing his favorite meals, learning his preferences, attempting conversation. He'd barely looked at her, spoke to her only when necessary, touched her only during the full moon when biology demanded it. She told herself it would get better, that he just needed time. "Are you listening to me?" Mortessa's sharp voice cut through the memory. Elani straightened. "Yes, Mortessa." The witch's expression shifted, something almost like concern crossing her features. She sat beside Elani, taking her wrinkled hands. "I know I'm hard on you, but it's because I see potential in you. You survived what would have destroyed weaker women. You're not like them, those simpering females who define themselves by which alpha claims them." Her grip tightened. "You're mine now, my daughter, in all the ways that matter. And I'm going to make you strong." The word daughter always made Elani's chest constrict. She had no one else, no family, no pack, no home, just Mortessa and this cottage and the endless missions. "I have a new task for you." Mortessa released her hands and moved to a shelf lined with bottles and bones. "The most important one yet. There's an alpha king named Noah who rules the Ebonreach kingdom, powerful, wealthy, beloved by his people." She pulled out a rolled parchment and spread it on the table. It showed a map of a massive castle. In his private study, he keeps an amulet, ancient, powerful. I need it. Elani studied the map. What does it do? That's not your concern. Mortessa's voice went sharp. Your concern is retrieving it without getting caught. This isn't some minor pack territory. This is one of the largest kingdoms in the realm. Security will be tight. You'll need to infiltrate his court, gain his trust. She paused, lips curving into a cold smile. Lucky for you, no one suspects harmless old women. The weight of it settled over Elani. 8 years of smaller missions, stealing herbs, gathering information, delivering messages. This was different. This was entering the lion's den. When do I leave? Tomorrow at first light. Mortessa circled her, predatory. And Elani, don't fail me. Don't let some charming alpha turn your head like the last one did. Remember what Vorin taught you. Men only want what they can break. Once they break you, they discard you. She leaned close, breath hot against Elani's ear. Prove you're not that weak Omega anymore. Prove you're worthy of the gift I gave you. Gift, the spell that had saved her life and imprisoned her in false skin. Every day from 6 a.m. to midnight, she was trapped as an old crone. Only during those 6 hours of darkness could she be herself, young, beautiful, utterly alone with her true face. Elani nodded, exhaustion pulling at her. I should rest. Yes, you should. Mortessa's hand landed on her shoulder, the touch somehow both comforting and possessive. Sleep well, my girl. Tomorrow you begin the most important work of your life. In her small room, Elani lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Memories of that last night in Silver Peak played behind her eyes like a nightmare she couldn't escape. The harvest moon celebration had filled the great hall with music and laughter. Elani had worn a gown of deep blue, had styled her silver blonde hair in intricate braids. For once, Vorin had asked her to accompany him, and she dared to hope it meant something. The hope died the moment he'd taken the stage. My people, Vorin's voice had carried through the hall, commanding silence. I have an announcement regarding my mate. Elani had smiled, thinking he might finally acknowledge their bond publicly, might show her the respect she'd been denied. Instead, he'd looked at her with open disgust. I, Alpha Vorin of Silver Peak, formally reject Elani as my mate and queen. She is barren, unable to provide an heir. Worse, she has betrayed this pack's trust in the vilest way possible. The hall had erupted in gasps and whispers. Elani had stood frozen, unable to process his words. She has been spreading her legs for palace guards, Vorin continued, his voice carrying false sorrow, attempting to conceive a bastard to pass off as my heir. When confronted, she did something far worse. He'd pulled out a ledger, held it high. The royal treasury has been emptied, 50,000 gold pieces stolen over the past year, and all evidence points to her. No. The word had barely escaped Elani's lips. No, I never. Guards. Vorin's command was sharp. Take the traitor to the dungeons. She will be executed at dawn for theft and treason. Rough hands had grabbed her. She'd struggled, pleaded, looked desperately to the crowd for anyone who might defend her. But she'd been a shadow in Vorin's court, barely noticed, never befriended. No one stepped forward. The dungeon had been cold and dark. Elani had curled in the corner of her cell, the mate bond severing with agonizing finality. She'd felt it tear away like flesh from bone, leaving a raw wound in her chest. She was going to die. For crimes she didn't commit, rejected by a mate who'd never wanted her in the first place. That's when Mortessa had appeared, materializing in the cell like smoke, smelling of herbs and old magic. Elani, daughter of the Silver Moon bloodline. The witch's voice had been almost gentle. "I can save you, but freedom comes with a price. Anything." Elani had gasped the word. "Please." "You'll serve me for the rest of your life. No questions, no refusal. I'll hide you where no one can find you, give you a face that won't be recognized, but you'll belong to me, body and soul." Elani had barely hesitated. Death or servitude? The choice was simple. Mortessa had placed cold hands on her face, and the spell had burned through her. She'd felt her skin stretch and wrinkle, her hair gray, her body shrink and weaken. When the guards had burst in moments later, they'd found only an old woman where a young queen had been. She'd walked past them, walked right out of the castle. No one had looked twice. Now, lying in this small room 8 years later, Elani wondered if she'd traded one prison for another. But at least she was alive. At least she had those 6 hours each night when she could see her real face in the mirror and remember who she'd been. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. Elani felt the familiar prickling across her skin that signaled the transformation beginning. Her bones shifted, youth flooding back like a tide. Her hair lengthened and lightened. The aches in her joints vanished. She rose and looked in the small mirror. Silver blonde hair cascaded past her shoulders. Bright blue eyes stared back from a face that was 29 instead of 70. For 6 hours, she was Elani again. For 6 hours, she was real. But as the first light of dawn would creep toward the window, the spell would reclaim her. It always did. She touched her reflection. Fingers, trembling against the glass. Tomorrow she would travel to Ebenreek. Tomorrow she would infiltrate an Alpha King's court and steal from him. Tomorrow she would be the old woman again, invisible and ignored. Tonight, just for a few hours, she let herself grieve for the queen she'd been, the mate she'd tried to love, the life that had been ripped away. A knock sounded at her door. Mortessa's voice drifted through. "Elani, are you crying in there?" She wiped her eyes quickly. "No, Mortessa. Good. Tears are for weak women. You're not weak anymore, are you?" "No, Mortessa." Silence. Then softer. "Get some sleep, child. You'll need your strength." Elani climbed back into bed, her young body feeling strange after a day of being old. The missions had taught her many things over the years. How to pick locks, how to move unseen, how to lie convincingly, how to read people's weaknesses and exploit them. She'd become exactly what Mortessa wanted, a useful tool. But as sleep finally claimed her, Elani couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would be different, that entering Alpha King Noah's court would change everything. She just didn't know if that change would finally set her free or destroy what little remained of who she'd once been. Chapter 2. The journey to Ebenreach took 3 days. Elani traveled as the old woman, hunched over a walking stick, her few possessions in a worn pack. Other travelers on the road barely glanced at her. Just another elderly woman, too poor for bandits to bother with, too frail to be a threat. Perfect invisibility. The landscape shifted as she walked. The wild forests around Mortessa's cottage gave way to cultivated farmland, then small villages, then larger towns. Ebenreach's territory was prosperous, the roads well maintained, the people well fed. This was a kingdom that thrived under its Alpha's leadership. It made Elani's mission feel heavier. She wasn't stealing from a tyrant. She was stealing from someone who, by all accounts, was genuinely good. But Mortessa's ultimatum echoed in her mind: succeed or lose everything. The spell could be made permanent. She could be trapped as an old woman forever, even during those precious 6 hours of night. The thought terrified her more than death. As she walked, Memories continued to surface, filling the long hours on the road. She remembered the first time she'd seen Voren. The mating ceremony had been elaborate, both families present, the pack watching. He'd been handsome in his formal attire, dark-haired and strong-jawed. When the pack elder had bound their wrists together with ceremonial cord, Elani had felt the mate bond snap into place, that mystical connection that was supposed to bring them together. But Voren had barely met her eyes, had recited the words mechanically, and when the ceremony ended and they were expected to consummate the bond, he'd done so with cold efficiency, then left her alone in the marriage bed. She'd told herself he was nervous, that he'd warmed to her. Instead, he'd grown more distant. Entire weeks would pass without him speaking to her beyond necessary pleasantries. He took his meals in his study, conducted pack business without consulting her, went on hunts and border patrols without a word. Elani had tried everything. She'd studied his interests, attempted to engage him in conversation about pack politics and territory management. She'd dressed beautifully for formal events, hoping to catch his eye. She'd even asked him directly what she could do to make him happy. His response had been crushing. "You're doing everything expected of you. Continue." Expected. That's all she'd been. An obligation, a political necessity. The worst part was the other women. Elani had known about them. Palace staff who'd enter his chambers late at night and leave before dawn. He'd never hidden it, never pretended he was faithful. The mate bond meant nothing to him except a legal tie. And when she'd finally worked up the courage to confront him, to ask why he'd even gone through with the mating if he didn't want her, he'd looked at her with something close to annoyance. "My parents arranged it. Yours agreed. It benefits both our territories. Why are you making this complicated?" That's when Elani had started to understand. She wasn't a person to him. She was a transaction. 3 years. 3 years of trying to be enough, of hoping he'd see her, of dying slowly inside that beautiful palace, invisible, despite being queen. Then came the treasury discrepancy. Elani had noticed it first. She'd been reviewing the kingdom's accounts because she'd needed something to fill her empty days. The numbers didn't match. 50,000 gold pieces missing over several months. The withdrawals authorized by signatures that looked like hers but weren't. She'd brought it to Voren immediately, thinking he'd want to investigate. Instead, his expression had gone cold. "You're accusing me of theft?" "No. I'm saying someone is stealing from us. Look at these records." He'd cut her off. "I'll handle it." That had been 2 weeks before the Harvest Moon celebration. 2 weeks before he'd destroyed her in front of everyone. Now, walking the roads toward Ebonreach, Elani understood what had really happened. Voren had been embezzling from his own treasury, using his power to cover it up, and when she'd discovered it, he'd needed a scapegoat. Better yet, he'd needed to remove her entirely, the unwanted mate who'd become a liability. The public rejection and false accusations had accomplished both, and framing her for the theft meant no one would believe her if she tried to expose him. It was brilliantly cruel. The sun beat down on Elani's bent back. Her disguise made the heat feel worse, the old woman's body struggling with temperature regulation. But she'd learned to endure discomfort. 8 years of Mortessa's missions had taught her that. She thought about the witch's hatred of women. It had taken Elani a while to understand it, to piece together the story from Mortessa's occasional bitter comments. Mortessa had been beautiful once, had fallen in love with an alpha who'd courted her, promised her everything. They'd been together for years, or so the witch claimed. Then his family had arranged a more politically advantageous match, and he'd cast Mortessa aside without a second thought. The rejection had broken something in her. She'd turned to dark magic, seeking power since love had betrayed her. and somewhere along the way her hurt had twisted into contempt for the women she saw as weaker versions of herself, the ones who still believed in love, who still trusted alphas, who hadn't learned the lesson she'd learned too late. "You're all pathetic," Mortessa had once said during one of her lectures. "Waiting for some strong alpha to save you, to complete you. Don't you understand? They don't want partners. They want property, pretty things to show off and use." But then she'd soften, reaching out to touch Elani's face. "That's why I saved you. You're different. You're learning. My clever, strong girl." The push and pull of it was exhausting. Love and contempt braided together so tightly Elani couldn't separate them. Sometimes she wondered if Mortessa saw herself in Elani, a younger version who'd been discarded, who'd learned the hard truth about alphas and mates and love. Maybe that's why the witch had saved her, not out of pure kindness, but out of recognition. A shared wound. On the third evening, as the sun set in brilliant orange across the horizon, Elani crested a hill and saw Ebonreach Castle in the distance. It was magnificent, larger than Silver Peak, with towers that reached toward the sky and walls that gleamed white stone. The city sprawled around it, prosperous and bustling even from this distance. Lights began to flicker on in windows, making the whole view look like stars had fallen to earth. Elani's hands tightened on her walking stick. Somewhere in that castle was Alpha King Noah and the amulet Mortessa wanted. Somewhere in there was her mission. She found a spot off the road to wait for nightfall. As the clock in a nearby village tolled midnight, the transformation swept through her. She became young and beautiful again, sitting alone in the darkness. For these 6 hours she could move without the ache of old joints, could think without the fog that came with the disguise. She pulled out a small mirror from her pack and studied her face. Silver blonde hair caught the moonlight. Blue eyes reflected back at her, sad and determined. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection. "You've survived worse." But had she? At least with Mortessa's smaller missions, the stakes had been limited. This felt enormous, dangerous in ways she couldn't fully articulate. As dawn approached, the spell reclaimed her. Youth drained away. Age settled back over her like a heavy cloak. By the time the sun rose, she was the old woman again, making her slow way down the hill toward the city gates. The guards barely looked at her when she joined the line of travelers entering Ebonreach. Just another elderly woman seeking what? She needed a story. "Business in the city, grandmother?" one guard asked, his tone polite but disinterested. "I'm a traveling herbalist," Elani replied, making her voice quaver with age. "Hoping to sell my remedies and perhaps find work. These old bones can't travel forever." The guard waved her through without further question. Ebonreach's streets were clean and well organized. The people looked healthy, their clothes decent quality. Children played in courtyards while their parents worked. This was a well-run kingdom, a stark contrast to how Silver Peak had been under Voran's leadership. Elani spent the day observing, gathering information. She listened to conversations in the marketplace, noting how people spoke about their Alpha King. The words were consistent, just, fair, kind, strong. They loved him. She learned that King Noah had lost his mate 2 years ago in a border raid, that he'd grieved deeply, but continued to lead his people with wisdom, that he refused all attempts by other packs to arrange new matings, preferring to rule alone. She learned that the castle employed various staff from the city, that positions were competitive, that the pay was good, and the working conditions fair. And she formed a plan. By evening, she'd made her way to the castle's service entrance. An elderly woman in an apron was hauling buckets of water, struggling with the weight. "Let me help you with that, dear," Elani offered, taking one of the buckets. The woman looked grateful. "Thank you. These old knees aren't what they used to be." They chatted as they worked. The woman's name was Berta, and she'd been working in the castle kitchens for 30 years. She complained about the workload, about staff shortages, about how hard it was to find good help these days. "I don't suppose you're looking for work?" Berta asked hopefully. "You seem spry enough for your age." Elani smiled. "Actually, I am. I'm a skilled herbalist. I could tend to staff ailments, prepare medicinal teas, help with the work." "The goddess must have sent you," Berta clapped her hands together. "Come, let me take you to the head housekeeper. We desperately need someone with your skills." It was almost too easy. Within an hour, Elani had been hired as a combination herbalist and helper for the castle staff. She was given a small room in the servants' quarters and told to report to the kitchens the next morning. That first night in her new room, Elani waited for midnight. When the transformation came, she stood at the small window and looked out at the castle grounds. Somewhere in one of those towers was Alpha King Noah. Somewhere was the amulet she needed to steal. She studied the layout from her vantage point, noting guard patterns, window locations, the tower that likely held the royal chambers. She'd need to be careful, patient. This wasn't a quick grab and run. This was infiltration. A sound outside her door made her freeze. Footsteps in the hallway, then voices. "The new herbalist seems competent." "Did you see how old she is? I hope she can handle the work." Berta vouched for her. "That's good enough for me." The voices faded. Elani relaxed, but her heart raced. She needed to be more careful. If anyone saw her like this, young and beautiful instead of old, questions would be asked that she couldn't answer. She moved away from the window and sat on the narrow bed. The room was simple but clean. Better than Mortessa's cottage, actually. Certainly better than that dungeon cell 8 years ago. For just a moment, she let herself imagine staying here, working as a simple herbalist, living a quiet life, free from Mortessa's demands and missions, free from the constant fear and loneliness. But that was impossible. The spell bound her to Mortessa's will, and even if she ran, even if she tried to hide, the witch would find her, would make the punishment worse than death. No, she had to complete this mission, steal the amulet, return it to Mortessa, continue this half-life existence. It was the only option she had. As dawn approached and the spell began to reclaim her, Elani looked at her young face one last time in the small mirror. "Just survive," she whispered. "That's all you have to do. Survive." Her reflection aged before her eyes. Silver blonde hair grayed, smooth skin wrinkled, youth vanished like morning mist. The old woman in the mirror looked back at her, and Elani wondered if this face would be the last thing she'd ever see. If one day the spell would become permanent, and she'd forget what it felt like to be young, to be real, to be anything other than invisible. But there was no time for despair. She had work to do, an alpha king to deceive, an amulet to steal. And somehow, despite everything, despite knowing she should hate all alphas after what Vorin had done, Elani found herself curious about Noah. What kind of man earned such love from his people? What kind of alpha ruled with justice instead of cruelty? What did he look like, sound like, feel like in presence? She'd find out soon enough, and when she did, she'd have to remember Mortessa's warning. Don't let some charming alpha turn your head like the last one did, because the last one had destroyed her, and she couldn't survive being destroyed twice. Chapter 3. Elani worked in the castle for 5 days before she saw Alpha King Noah for the first time. Those 5 days taught her the rhythm of the place. She rose early, prepared medicinal teas for staff who needed them, treated minor ailments, and helped with various tasks. The other servants accepted her quickly, just another old woman trying to earn her keep, no threat to anyone. She learned the castle's layout, noting which corridors led where, which areas had heavier guard presence, where the royal chambers were located. She was patient. Mortessa had taught her that patience was often the difference between success and failure. At night, when her transformation returned her to her true form, she studied what she'd learned, made mental maps, planned potential routes to Noah's private study. But she also spent those hours staring out her window at the castle towers, feeling a loneliness so profound it made her chest ache. 8 years of this. 8 years of being two different people, neither of them fully real. 8 years of having no friends, no family, no one who knew her actual name or face. Mortessa was all she had, and Mortessa's affection came wrapped in cruelty and conditions. On the 5th day, Elani was in the kitchen garden harvesting chamomile when she heard a commotion near the main courtyard. Servants were straightening their clothes, standing taller. Energy rippled through the air, the kind that came when an alpha's presence approached. "The king is returning from his morning ride," Berta whispered excitedly beside her. "Isn't he magnificent?" Elani looked up, and the breath caught in her throat. Alpha King Noah rode through the gates on a black stallion, sunlight catching in his dark hair. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face handsome in a rugged way that spoke of warrior training and outdoor pursuits. But it was his expression that struck her, open, warm, with a slight smile as he greeted the guards by name. He dismounted with easy grace, handing the reins to a stable hand while asking about the man's injured daughter. The genuine concern in his voice was unmistakable. This was nothing like Vorin, nothing like the cold, distant Alpha who'd treated everyone as beneath his notice. "He's a good king," Berta said softly. "The best we've ever had. Such a tragedy about his mate." Elani watched as Noah made his way toward the castle entrance, stopping to speak with various staff members along the way. He remembered names, asked questions, listened to responses. He carried the natural authority of an alpha, but tempered it with something rare: kindness. For just a moment, his gaze swept across the courtyard and landed on her. Elani felt the full weight of an alpha's attention. Even from this distance, his eyes were dark, intense. Then his expression softened into a polite smile, the kind you'd give any elderly servant, and he moved on. He hadn't really seen her. Just like everyone else, he'd looked at the disguise and dismissed what lay beneath. She should have felt relieved. Invisibility was the point. Instead, she felt hollow. That evening, as she prepared sleeping drafts in the small workroom she'd been assigned, Berta appeared in the doorway. "The king has requested you," the older woman said, beaming. "He heard we have a skilled herbalist and wants to consult with you about his sleep troubles." Elani's heart jumped. "He wants to see me?" "Yes, go on, dear. 3rd floor, west wing, his private study. The guards will direct you." This was it, the opportunity she'd been working toward, access to the king's private spaces. But her hands trembled as she gathered her supplies and made her way through the castle corridors. The guards at Noah's study let her pass without question. She knocked on the heavy wooden door, her old woman's knuckles making a soft sound. "Enter." His voice was deep, carrying the resonance of alpha command softened by exhaustion. Elani pushed open the door and stepped into a room that took her breath away. One wall was entirely windows, overlooking the kingdom. Another was lined floor to ceiling with books. A massive desk dominated the center, covered in papers and maps, and sitting behind it, looking tired but alert, was Noah. "You must be the new herbalist," he said, standing. The gesture surprised her. Most alphas wouldn't stand for a servant. "Thank you for coming. I know it's late." "It's no trouble, Your Majesty." Elani kept her voice the quavering tone of an old woman. "I understand you're having difficulty sleeping." Noah gestured to a sitting area near the windows. "Please sit. I don't want you standing on my account." Again, unexpected courtesy. Elani settled into a chair while Noah took another across from her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "I haven't slept properly in months," he admitted. "I wake every night, sometimes multiple times. My mind won't quiet." "What occupies your thoughts when you wake?" Elani pulled out her various dried herbs and began examining them. Noah was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried old grief. "My mate. It's been 2 years since she died, but the nightmares persist. I see the attack, see myself failing to protect her. When I wake, the castle feels empty." Elani's hand stilled over her herbs. She knew that emptiness, the kind that came from losing the person who was supposed to stand beside you, even if that person had never truly been there. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said softly, and meant it. Noah looked at her with those dark, intense eyes. "What's your name?" The question startled her. Most nobles never asked servants' names. "Elani, Your Majesty. Just Elani. I'm a traveling herbalist. I left my family name behind long ago." It wasn't entirely a lie. She'd left everything behind. Name, title, pack, identity. Noah nodded slowly. "You remind me of my grandmother. She was an herbalist too. Taught me which plants could heal and which could harm." A small smile crossed his face. She also had no patience for self-pity. Used to tell me that grief was natural, but drowning in it was a choice. "Your grandmother sounds wise." She was. Noah leaned back in his chair. "She also would have told me that not sleeping for months makes me a fool who can't lead effectively." Elani allowed herself a small smile. "I would never presume to call my king a fool, but she might have had a point." To her surprise, Noah laughed. It was a genuine sound, warm and unexpected. "You're direct. I appreciate that." She began mixing herbs, valerian root, chamomile, lavender, passion flower. "I'll prepare you a tea to take before bed. It should help quiet your mind and deepen your sleep, but—" She hesitated. "But, forgive me, Your Majesty, but herbs can only do so much. You're carrying your grief alone. Sometimes we need more than plants to heal." Noah's expression shifted. For a moment she saw past the Alpha King to the man beneath, lonely, hurting, trying to hold himself together. "I can't burden my people with my pain," he said quietly. "They need me to be strong." "Strength and vulnerability aren't opposites," Elani replied, her fingers working the herbs. "The strongest people I've known were the ones brave enough to admit when they were breaking." Silence fell between them. She'd said too much, overstepped. She was supposed to be a simple herbalist, not a counselor dispensing wisdom. But when she glanced up, Noah was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "How did you become so wise?" "I'm old," she said, deflecting with humor. "We either become wise or bitter. I chose the former." "And what made you choose traveling instead of settling somewhere?" The question probed too close to truth. Elani focused on her work. Sometimes staying in one place means staying with painful memories. Moving forward literally felt like the only way to survive. Noah leaned forward. "You've known loss." It wasn't a question. Alphas were perceptive, and Noah was clearly more perceptive than most. Everyone knows loss eventually, Your Majesty. She finished mixing the tea and handed it to him. Steep this for 5 minutes in hot water before bed. Take it for 7 nights, then we'll assess if you need a different blend. Noah accepted the herbs, but his gaze didn't leave her face. Will you come back to see if it's working? If you wish, Your Majesty. I do. He stood, and she did the same. And Elani, thank you. Not just for the herbs, but for listening. It's been a long time since anyone... He trailed off, but she understood. A long time since anyone saw him as more than the Alpha King, since anyone treated his grief as valid instead of a weakness to overcome. Good night, Your Majesty, she said gently. Noah, he replied. When it's just us, call me Noah. The informality was shocking, unprecedented, dangerous for her mission because it made him human instead of just a target. Good night, Noah, she managed. His smile was small but genuine. Good night, Elani. She left the study in a daze. That had been not what she expected. She'd anticipated a distant, formal consultation. Instead, she'd had a real conversation, had seen glimpses of a man who was lonely and grieving, who carried the weight of a kingdom while dealing with his own unhealed wounds. She'd liked him. The realization was alarming. She couldn't afford to like Noah. She was here to steal from him, to complete Mortessa's mission and return to servitude. Liking him would only make everything more complicated. As midnight approached, and she returned to her room, the transformation swept through her. Youth returned, beauty bloomed, and she stood at her small mirror looking at her true face. Don't be stupid, she whispered to her reflection. He's an alpha. He'll use you and discard you just like Vorin did, just like they all do. But even as she said it, she knew Noah was different. The way he'd stood when she entered, the way he'd asked her name, the genuine grief in his voice when he spoke of his mate. He'd loved his mate, had spent 2 years grieving her loss instead of immediately finding a replacement. That kind of devotion was rare among alphas. Or maybe, a cynical voice whispered in her mind, maybe it's all an act. Maybe he's charming everyone the way Vorin charmed his people while being cold to you in private. She didn't know which possibility scared her more, that Noah was genuinely kind, or that he was another skilled manipulator. Either way, she had a job to do. Get close to him, gain his trust, learn his schedule, find the right moment to enter his study and steal the amulet. She'd seen it tonight, sitting on his desk, partially hidden under papers, a crystalline amulet on a silver chain, glowing faintly with magic, exactly as Mortessa had described. It would be so easy to take it. Wait for the next consultation, slip it into her pocket while his back was turned. But something made her hesitate. Maybe it was the memory of his grief-stricken face. Maybe it was her own lonely reflection in the mirror, reminding her that she was already someone who'd been used and discarded. Did she want to become the person who did that to others? You don't have a choice, she told herself firmly. Complete the mission or lose everything. Still, as dawn approached and the spell reclaimed her youth, Elani couldn't shake the image of Noah's eyes, dark and tired, and so very alone, just like hers. Chapter 4. The sleeping tea worked. Noah told her so 3 days later when he requested another consultation. I've slept through the night twice this week, he said, looking more rested than before. Whatever you put in this blend, it's remarkable. They were in his study again, late evening, the window showing a darkening sky. Elani had brought a fresh batch of herbs, but found herself oddly nervous about this meeting. I'm glad it's helping, Your Majesty. Noah, he corrected gently. Please. She inclined her head, Noah. He smiled at that, and she noticed how it transformed his face. He was handsome when serious, but when he smiled, he became almost beautiful. It made her chest tighten in an uncomfortable way. Sit, please. He gestured to the same sitting area. I'd like to talk, if you have time. Elani should have made an excuse, should have delivered the herbs and left. Instead, she found herself settling into the chair across from him. How are you adjusting to the castle? Noah asked. Very well. Everyone has been welcoming. The staff speaks highly of you. Berta says you've already improved several people's chronic ailments. He leaned back, studying her. You could work in any noble's court with your skills. Why travel alone at your age? The question was casual, but Elani heard the genuine curiosity beneath it. Noah wanted to know about her, wanted to understand the elderly herbalist he'd invited into his private study. I had a life before this, she said carefully. I was part of a pack once, had a position of responsibility. But things fell apart, and I couldn't stay there anymore. What happened? Too many questions, but she found herself answering anyway, weaving truth with lies. I was blamed for something I didn't do. The alpha. She paused, letting old pain color her voice. He turned everyone against me. I barely escaped with my life. Noah's expression darkened. An alpha who would betray his own pack member is no true leader. He was my mate, Elani said quietly, or he was supposed to be. Silence fell. She'd revealed too much, but Noah's face had shifted into understanding, his eyes softening. He rejected you. Publicly, cruelly, then tried to have me executed for crimes I never committed. The words spilled out before she could stop them, years of suppressed emotion bleeding through. I trusted him, tried to be a good mate, but I was never enough. Elani. Noah's voice was gentle. That says everything about him and nothing about you. She looked up, startled by the conviction in his tone. Some alphas, Noah continued, see their mates as possessions instead of partners. It's a corruption of what the bond is supposed to be. He paused. My mate and I were arranged as well, but we chose to make it real. We talked, we listened to each other, we built something genuine. When she died, his voice roughened. It was like losing half of myself. Elani saw the grief wash over his face, raw and unhealed. Without thinking, she reached across and touched his hand. I'm sorry. Noah looked down at her wrinkled hand on his, then back to her face. How do you move past it? The betrayal? The loss? Honestly, I'm not sure I have. Elani withdrew her hand, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the gesture. I survive day by day. Some days are harder than others. Do you ever think about trying again? Finding another mate? No. The answer came swift and certain. I won't give anyone that kind of power over me again. Noah nodded slowly. I understand that. After losing Lily, He stopped, shook his head. My advisors keep pushing me to take another mate. Political alliances, securing an heir, all the usual arguments. But the thought of going through that again. You don't want to betray her memory. It's more than that. Noah stood and walked to the windows, looking out over his kingdom. I don't want to betray myself. I won't bond with someone just for politics or duty. Lily and I had something real. If I mate again, it will be because I find that again, nothing less. The conviction in his voice made Elani's heart clench. This was an alpha who valued love over strategy, who'd rather rule alone than dishonor a bond by treating it as mere transaction. She thought of Voren and wanted to laugh at the contrast, or cry. She wasn't sure which. Your kingdom is lucky to have you, she said softly. Noah turned back to her. Sometimes I wonder, a good king should be able to separate personal feelings from what's best for his people, but I can't seem to do it. Can't force myself into another arranged mating, even though it would strengthen alliances. A good king, Elani replied, rules with both wisdom and heart. The ones who lead with only logic become tyrants. The ones who lead with only emotion become weak. You're trying to find the balance. That's not a flaw. Noah walked back and sat across from her again. How did you get so wise? Pain is an excellent teacher. It is, he agreed quietly, though I could have done without some of the lessons. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Elani should leave. This conversation had gone far beyond what was appropriate for an alpha king and a servant, but Noah seemed reluctant to end it, and she found herself equally reluctant to go. Tell me something, Noah said. In all your traveling, have you found anywhere that felt like home? The question pierced her. No. I'm not sure I know what home feels like anymore. I understand that too. Noah's gaze was steady on her face. After Lily died, this castle felt like a tomb. I walk through rooms we used to share, and they're just empty spaces now. I rule from the same study, sleep in the same chambers, but none of it feels like home without her. Maybe home isn't a place, Elani offered. Maybe it's a feeling, a sense of being seen and valued for who you really are. Have you ever felt that? Once, briefly, before everything fell apart. She thought of the few moments during her mating to Voren when she'd allowed herself to hope he might see her. It was an illusion, but it felt real while it lasted. Noah leaned forward. It wasn't an illusion for you. Your feelings were real. He was the illusion, the pretender, who wasn't worthy of what you offered. The words hit her with unexpected force. For 8 years, she'd carried the weight of Voren's rejection, had internalized his message that she wasn't enough. Mortessa reinforced it constantly. You were weak, you were disposable, you were nothing he wanted. But Noah was suggesting something different, that the failure was Voren's, not hers. You're kind to say so, she managed. I'm not being kind, I'm being honest. Noah's intensity made her uncomfortable and comforted simultaneously. I've known alphas like the one who hurt you. They're everywhere. Males who see others as tools for their advancement. They're empty inside, and they try to fill that emptiness by controlling and diminishing everyone around them. You were never the problem. Elani felt tears prick her eyes, which alarmed her. She couldn't afford to break down in front of him, couldn't afford to let him see past the disguise in any way. I should go, she said abruptly. It's late, and you need rest. Noah looked like he wanted to protest, but he nodded. Will you come back, in 3 days, to check on the herb's effectiveness? Of course, Your Majesty. Noah, he corrected again, smiling slightly. Noah, she repeated. She left his study quickly, her mind reeling. The conversation had been dangerous. She'd revealed too much, let him see too much of her real self even while hiding behind the disguise. And worse, far worse, she'd enjoyed it, enjoyed talking to him, being seen by him, feeling valued by someone who didn't treat her as a tool or a disappointment. Back in her room, she paced until midnight. When the transformation came and her youth returned, she stood at the mirror and stared at her true face. You're being an idiot, she told her reflection. He's being kind to an old woman. That's all this is. You're reading meaning into basic decency because you're so desperate for connection that you'll take anything. But even as she said it, she didn't quite believe it. There had been real connection in that study. Real conversation, real emotion, real understanding passing between them, which made everything so much harder. A soft knock at her door made her freeze. Who would be knocking at midnight? Elani? A woman's voice. Are you awake? She recognized the voice. Mira, one of the younger servants who cleaned the royal chambers. Just a moment. Elani scrambled to grab a shawl and wrapped it around herself, hiding her young body. She cracked the door open, keeping most of herself concealed in shadow. Mira looked distressed. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but my tooth is aching terribly, and I remembered you had that clove oil tincture. Of course. Hold on, Elani kept the door mostly closed, while she retrieved the tincture from her supplies. She handed it through the gap. Apply it to the gum around the tooth. It should numb the pain. Thank you. Mira took the bottle gratefully. You're a lifesaver. I don't know what we did before you arrived. As Mira left, Elani closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. That had been close. If Mira had seen her true form, if anyone discovered the disguise, she needed to be more careful, needed to stop having long conversations with Noah that made her forget why she was really here. The amulet. She needed to steal it and leave before this mission became impossible to complete. She moved to her small desk and began sketching the layout of Noah's study from memory. The desk where the amulet sat, the windows, the door. She noted that Noah worked in his study most evenings, which meant she'd need to access it either very late at night or during the day when he was elsewhere. Late at night would be risky. The guards knew the king often stayed in his study until the early morning hours. If she was caught sneaking around the royal corridors, there would be no good explanation. During the day would be easier, but she'd need to find out Noah's schedule, determine when he'd reliably be away from his study for an extended period, which meant more interactions with him, more conversations that would chip away at her resolve. Mortessa's last message had arrived yesterday via a crow at her window. The note had been brief but sharp. Don't dawdle. Complete the mission. Remember what happens if you fail. The threat was clear. Mortessa's patience was finite. Elani looked at her sketches, then at her reflection in the window. Two faces, the old woman everyone saw, and the young woman no one knew existed. Two missions. The one Mortessa demanded, and the one her heart was beginning to want, which was simply to stay here, to keep having conversations with an alpha who treated her like a person. You can't have both, she whispered to her reflection. You never could. Dawn crept toward the horizon. Soon the spell would reclaim her. She'd be the old woman again, shuffling through the castle, preparing herbs, being invisible. And in 3 days she'd sit in Noah's study again, would talk to him, listen to him, feel that dangerous connection growing stronger. She knew she should stop, should steal the amulet at the first opportunity and run before this became more complicated. But as the sun rose and age settled over her like a familiar cloak, Elani admitted the truth to herself. It was already too late. She was already in too deep. Chapter 5. Elani discovered Noah's schedule through careful observation and casual questions to other staff. He held court proceedings 3 mornings a week, presided over training exercises with his warriors on alternate days, and conducted territory inspections every other week. More importantly, she learned about his midnight ritual. The king writes letters to his late mate every night, Berta confided over tea in the kitchen. Goes to his study at midnight, writes until dawn sometimes. It's heartbreaking, really. But Mira says he won't let anyone clean his study past sunset, wants his privacy for the letters. The information gave Elani an idea, a dangerous, reckless idea. Her nighttime transformation began at midnight. If Noah was in his study writing letters at that exact time, and if she could somehow engineer an encounter, she'd be herself, her true self, young, beautiful, unrecognizable. It was insane. It multiplied her risk exponentially, but it also presented an opportunity. If she could get close to him as her real self, she could search the study while she distracted him, could learn his patterns, find the perfect moment to take the amulet. But there was another reason, one she didn't want to acknowledge. She wanted him to see her, the real her. Wanted one person in 8 years to know she existed as more than a disguise. It was foolish and dangerous, and completely against everything Mortessa had taught her. She did it anyway. 2 weeks into her time at the castle, Elani prepared for her most reckless mission yet. She waited in her room as the evening stretched toward midnight, her old woman's body aching with anticipation. She'd learned Noah's pattern. He entered his study precisely at midnight, wrote for hours, and rarely left before dawn. Tonight, she would go to him, not as the old herbalist, but as herself. The clock struck midnight. The transformation swept through her like fire and ice. Youth bloomed, beauty returned, and she stood before her mirror as Elani, 29, silver blonde hair cascading down her back, blue eyes wide with fear and determination. She dressed carefully in a simple but elegant gown she'd stolen from the laundry, something a minor noblewoman might wear. Then she made her way through the castle corridors, heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The guards on night duty didn't know her face. When she approached Noah's study, one stepped forward. "The king isn't expecting visitors." "I'm a guest who arrived late," Elani lied smoothly. "I was told to meet him here, Lady—" She paused, inventing a name. "Lady Serene of the Northern Territories." The guard looked uncertain. Before he could question further, Noah's voice came from inside. "Let her in." He must have heard voices. The guard opened the door, and Elani stepped through into Noah's private study, as her true self for the first time. Noah sat at his desk, quill in hand, a half-written letter before him. Looked up, and the world seemed to stop. His eyes widened. The quill slipped from his fingers. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, and Elani felt the full weight of an alpha's undivided attention. It was intense, overwhelming, completely different from the polite regard he'd shown the old herbalist. "Who are you?" he finally managed. Elani's mind raced. She needed a story. "I apologize for the intrusion, Your Majesty. I'm traveling through and got separated from my companions. The castle gates were locked, and I wandered the corridors trying to find someone who could help." The lie felt flimsy, even as she spoke it. Noah stood slowly, moving around his desk. He was taller than she'd realized, broader. The full presence of him, alpha power barely contained, made her breath catch. "How did you get past the guards?" His voice carried suspicion but also curiosity. Elani faltered. She was terrible at this. 8 years of Mortessa's training, and she couldn't maintain a simple deception when Noah looked at her like that. "I got lost." Noah's gaze swept over her face, and something in his expression shifted. "You seem familiar. Have we met?" Panic flared. Could he somehow recognize her through the disguise? "I don't think so, Your Majesty." He moved closer, and she caught his scent. Pine and leather and something uniquely him. It made her dizzy. "What's your name?" She couldn't use Elani. That would connect her to the old herbalist. "Serene," she said, using the name she'd given the guard. "Serene." Noah said it slowly, testing it. "From the Northern Territories." "Yes." "Strange. I know all the noble families in the north. I don't recall a house serene. She was caught in her lie. Elani took a step back, but Noah followed, maintaining the distance between them. His eyes never left her face. "Please," she said, and the plea was genuine. "I should go." "Why did you really come here?" Noah's voice was gentle but firm. The truth. Elani looked at him, this alpha who'd been kind to an old woman, who wrote letters to his dead mate at midnight, who ruled with justice instead of cruelty. She couldn't tell him the full truth, but she could give him something real. "I'm lonely," she whispered. "I saw your light from the courtyard. I don't know what I thought, that maybe someone else was awake at midnight, unable to sleep, that maybe I wasn't the only one who felt alone." The honesty hung between them. Noah's expression softened, and when he spoke, his voice carried understanding. "You're not." They stood in silence, two lonely people in the middle of the night, both carrying wounds that hadn't healed. "Will you sit?" Noah gestured to the sitting area. "Just for a moment. We don't have to be alone tonight." Elani knew she should refuse, should leave before this became more complicated, but she found herself walking to the chair and sitting, and Noah took the seat across from her. The same configuration as when she visited as the old herbalist, but everything about it felt different now. "What keeps you awake?" he asked. "Memories? Regrets? The weight of choices I can't undo?" She met his eyes. "What about you?" Noah glanced at the desk where his half-written letter lay. "I write to someone who can't answer. Try to tell her about my day, about the kingdom, about how much I miss her. It's probably foolish. It's not foolish. It's beautiful." "Is it? Or is it refusing to move forward?" Elani leaned forward. "Maybe it's both. Maybe grief doesn't follow a timeline. Maybe some losses change us so completely that we carry them forever, and that's okay." Noah studied her face. "You've lost someone too." "I've lost everything," she said quietly. "Everything I thought I was, everything I thought I'd be. The life I imagined never existed. And now I don't know what I am." "You're here," Noah said. "That's something. You survived whatever took everything from you. That takes strength. Or cowardice. Maybe I should have fought harder." "Or maybe," Noah countered, "you were fighting an impossible battle. Sometimes survival is the only victory available." The words pierced her. She'd spent 8 years thinking of herself as weak, as the pathetic Omega who'd let Vorin destroy her. But Noah was suggesting something different. That leaving had been a form of strength, that surviving mattered. "Thank you," she said, voice thick with emotion. They talked until the windows began to lighten with approaching dawn, talked about loss and loneliness, about the weight of others' expectations, about what it meant to keep living when part of you had died. Noah never asked more about her identity, never pressed for details she couldn't give. He simply listened, shared, met her in the space where two wounded people could speak truth. When the sky shifted from black to gray, Elani stood abruptly. "I have to go." Noah rose as well. "Will you come back tomorrow night?" She should say no, should end this before it became impossible to walk away. But looking at his face, open, hoping, just as lonely as she felt, Elani couldn't force the refusal past her lips. "Yes," she whispered. Noah smiled, and it transformed him, made him look younger, less burdened. "Tomorrow, then." Elani fled his study, racing through the corridors back to her room. Dawn was coming fast. The transformation would happen soon. She barely made it inside and locked the door before the spell reclaimed her. Youth drained away. Her hair grayed, her skin wrinkled, her body aged and weakened. Within moments, she was the old woman again, breathing hard from the exertion of running. She'd done something incredibly stupid, had revealed herself to Noah, started something that could only end in disaster. But as she lay in her narrow bed, exhausted and terrified, and more alive than she'd felt in years, Elani couldn't bring herself to regret it. Not yet. Chapter 6. The next day, Elani moved through her duties in a daze. She prepared herbs, treated minor ailments, helped in the kitchen. The old woman routine felt more confining than ever after spending hours as herself. Around mid-morning, Noah appeared in the kitchen courtyard, where she was hanging herbs to dry. Several staff members straightened immediately, offering respectful greetings. Noah returned them warmly, then his gaze landed on her. "Elani," he said, "the sleeping herbs. I haven't given you an update recently. I hope they're still helping, Your Majesty." She kept her voice appropriately quavering. "They are, very much." Something in his expression was different, lighter. "In fact, I'd like to discuss adjusting the blend. Could you come to my study this evening?" "Of course, Your Majesty." He smiled at her, the same warm smile he'd given the old herbalist before. But now Elani knew what his smile looked like when directed at her true face. The contrast made her chest ache. Noah left, and Berta appeared at Elani's elbow. "The king seems in better spirits lately. Your herbs must be working wonders." "Perhaps," Elani murmured, though she suspected the herbs had little to do with Noah's improved mood. That evening she went to his study as the old woman. Noah greeted her with his usual courtesy, inviting her to sit. "The herbs have been helpful, I know," he said, "but I've found something else that helps more." "Oh?" "Conversation. Having someone to talk to late at night, someone who understands what it's like to carry loss." He leaned forward. "You've been kind to listen to me, Elani. I want you to know it's made a difference." Guilt twisted in her stomach. He was thanking her for listening, not knowing that she'd also deceived him, that she'd come to his study as a different person, that she was planning to come again tonight. "I'm glad I could help, Your Majesty." "Noah," he corrected gently, then paused. "I had another visitor last night, a woman named Serene. Have you heard of any noble guests arriving?" Elani's heart raced. "I haven't, no. Strange. She claimed to be lost in the castle, but—" Noah's expression turned thoughtful. "There was something about her, something familiar, and she spoke about loss in a way that reminded me of our conversations." Panic clawed at Elani. He was making connections, seeing patterns. She needed to redirect him. "Perhaps she's someone who needed help, like I once did. The world is full of people carrying hidden pain." "You're probably right." Noah settled back. "I invited her to return tonight. I hope she does." "Why?" The question slipped out before Elani could stop it. Too personal, too curious for a servant to ask, but Noah didn't seem offended. "Because for the first time in 2 years, I felt something other than grief, not replacing it, but existing alongside it. Hope, maybe, or just interest in another person." He met her eyes. "Is that wrong? To feel that while still grieving Lily?" "No," Elani said softly. "Your mate wouldn't want you frozen in grief forever. She'd want you to live." "How do you know that?" "Because anyone who truly loved you would want your happiness, even after they're gone." Noah was quiet for a long moment. "You're very wise for an old herbalist." "I've had time to learn what matters." After she left his study, Elani returned to her room and paced. This was spiraling out of control. Noah was developing feelings for Serene, for her true self, while confiding in the old herbalist, who was also her. She was living 2 relationships with the same man, and both felt devastatingly real. And and she still hadn't stolen the amulet. Mortessa's latest message had been sharper. 2 weeks and no progress. Don't test my patience. Elani looked at the small crow that had delivered the message, still perched on her windowsill. Tell her I'm working on it, she said. The crow cawed and flew away, but Elani knew Mortessa's patience was finite. Soon there would be consequences. Midnight approached. The transformation came, returning her to youth and beauty. She dressed in another borrowed gown, this one deep blue that matched her eyes, and made her way to Noah's study. This time the guards recognized her. Lady Serene, the king is expecting you. She entered to find Noah standing by the windows, looking out at the kingdom. He turned when she came in, and the smile that crossed his face made her breath catch. You came, he said. I said I would. People say many things they don't mean. Elani thought of Vorin, of empty promises and cold dismissals. I keep my word. Noah gestured to the sitting area, and they took their familiar positions. But tonight felt different. There was a charge in the air, an awareness between them that hadn't existed before. Tell me something real about yourself, Noah said. Not the story about being from the north. Something true. Elani's hands twisted in her lap. I don't know if I can. Why not? Because the truth is complicated. Dangerous, maybe. Try me. She met his eyes and made a decision. Not to tell him everything, but to give him what she could. I was mated once, to an alpha who never wanted me. He rejected me publicly, accused me of crimes I didn't commit, tried to have me killed. I escaped, but I lost everything. My name, my position, my pack. Now I'm... She paused, choosing words carefully. Hiding. Trying to survive. Noah's expression darkened with anger. He should be executed for that. Justice doesn't always come for men in power. It should. Noah leaned forward. Is that why you won't tell me your real name? You're afraid he'll find you? Partly. And partly because I don't know who I am anymore. The woman I was died 8 years ago. The woman I am now. I'm still figuring that out. What do you want to be? The question surprised her. No one had asked what she wanted in so long. Free, she whispered. I want to be free to choose my own path, to be seen for who I really am, to matter to someone without conditions. You matter to me, Noah said quietly. Elani's breath caught. You don't know me. I know you're brave enough to come here, to be honest about pain when most people hide it, to sit with a grieving king at midnight and make him feel less alone. He reached across the space between them and took her hand. His touch was warm, gentle. I know that's enough to matter. The contact sent electricity through her. Vorin had barely touched her except during perfunctory mating rituals, but Noah held her hand like it was precious, his thumb stroking across her knuckles in a gesture of tenderness that made tears prick her eyes. I shouldn't be here, she said, but didn't pull away. Why not? Because I'm not who you think I am. Then tell me who you are. She couldn't. The disguise, the mission, Mortessa's threats, all of it trapped her in lies. But she could give him this moment, this honesty of touch and presence. I'm someone who's been invisible for a long time, she said. Someone who forgot what it felt like to be seen. I see you, Noah said, and the intensity in his eyes made it true. They sat in silence, hands joined, the space between them charged with possibility. Elani knew she should leave, should stop this before her heart became involved. But it was already too late for that. What are you writing to her? She asked, gesturing to the desk. Your mate. Noah glanced at the unfinished letter. I was telling her about you, about meeting someone who makes me want to engage with life again. I was asking if she'd be angry. What do you think she'd say? Lily was generous. She'd probably tell me to stop writing letters and start living. He looked back at Elani. She'd like you, I think. The words pierced her. Here was Noah sharing his grief and his hope, being vulnerable and honest. And she was lying to him, wearing a disguise, planning to steal from him, betraying the trust he was offering. I should go, she said abruptly, pulling her hand back. Did I say something wrong? No, you've been... She swallowed hard. Perfect. That's the problem. Noah stood as she did. Will you come back tomorrow? I don't know if I should, but will you? Elani looked at him, this alpha who was nothing like what she'd expected, who was kind and grieving and lonely, and somehow seeing her even through her deceptions. She should say no, should end this. Yes, she whispered. Tomorrow. Noah's smile was radiant. Tomorrow, then. As she left, Elani heard him return to his desk, heard the scratch of his quill on paper as he continued his letter to Lily, telling his dead mate about the mysterious woman who'd appeared in his study, who made him feel alive again. The guilt was crushing. Back in her room, dawn approaching, Elani stared at her reflection as the transformation reclaimed her. You're going to destroy him, she told herself. When he finds out the truth, when you steal from him, you're going to break him just like Voren broke you. But even knowing that, even hating herself for it, she knew she'd return tomorrow night, because for the first time in 8 years, she felt alive. She felt seen. She felt like maybe, despite everything, she deserved to exist, and that feeling was too precious to give up, even though she knew it would end in disaster. Chapter 7. The pattern continued for a week. By day, Elani was the old herbalist, consulting with Noah about sleeping drafts and listening to him talk about court matters. By night, she was serene, sitting in his study until dawn, sharing carefully edited truths and feeling the connection between them deepen into something dangerous. Noah never tried to touch her beyond holding her hand, never pushed for more than she offered. But the way he looked at her was changing, warming. The grief that had dominated his expression was easing, replaced by something that looked like tentative hope, and Elani was falling. She told herself it wasn't real, that these midnight conversations were built on lies, that Noah was falling for a version of her that would vanish once he learned the truth. But her heart didn't listen to logic. She learned things about him, that he'd lost his parents in the same raid that killed his mate, that he'd had to take the throne while grieving 3 losses simultaneously, that he played piano when he needed to think, poorly but with enthusiasm, that he loved his people genuinely, saw leadership as service rather than power, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a training accident when he was 16, that he took his coffee black and hated carrots and read poetry when he couldn't sleep. Small things, human things, details that made him real instead of just a target for her mission. And he learned things about her too, or the version she could safely share. That she'd loved being queen before it all fell apart. That she'd tried desperately to make her mate see her. That she had nightmares about the dungeon cell where she'd awaited execution. That she didn't know if she'd ever trust an alpha again. Not all alphas are like him, Noah said one night, his hand warm around hers. How do I know that? You don't. Trust has to be earned. He met her eyes. Let me try to earn it, and he did. Small gestures over the days that followed. Noah made sure she had a comfortable chair in his study, asked her preferences for tea, listened when she spoke without interrupting, shared his own vulnerabilities first, making space for hers, never demanded more than she offered. It was everything Voren hadn't been. everything she'd once dreamed a mate could be. But the mission loomed. Mortessa's messages grew sharper. 3 weeks. Do you think I won't notice your failure? Complete the mission or face consequences. Elani stared at the amulet on Noah's desk during their consultations. It would be so easy. Wait until he was distracted, slip it into her pocket, leave the castle before he noticed. But every time she reached for it, she faltered. Then Noah's beta, Julian, began asking questions. The old herbalist, he said to Noah one afternoon when Elani was leaving the study. Where exactly did she come from? Elani froze in the corridor, listening. She's a traveling healer, Noah replied. Why? No one travels alone at that age. No one appears from nowhere with that level of skill and no verifiable background. Julian's voice carried suspicion. I've been making inquiries. There's no record of an herbalist named Elani in any neighboring territories. Maybe she gave a different name elsewhere. Maybe. Or maybe she's hiding something. Noah's response was sharp. She's an elderly woman who helps our staff. Not everyone is a threat, Julian. Not everyone, but some are. A pause. There have also been reports of a mysterious noblewoman visiting your study late at night, Lady Serene. Except no such noble exists in the north, and no guest has officially registered at the castle. Silence. Then Noah's voice, carefully controlled. My private affairs are my own. Of course, Your Majesty. I'm simply concerned for your safety. 2 unknown women appearing within weeks of each other, both with false backgrounds. That's enough. Noah's alpha command rang through the words. I appreciate your vigilance, but you're overreaching. Elani didn't wait to hear more. She hurried away, her old woman's heart pounding. Julian was investigating. It was only a matter of time before he connected the 2 identities, before he discovered the truth. She needed to complete the mission and leave. Tonight. When midnight came and the transformation returned her to youth, Elani dressed with shaking hands. Tonight she'd go to Noah's study. She'd distract him with conversation, with a connection between them. And when the moment was right, she'd take the amulet and disappear. It would break him, would betray everything they'd built. But she had no choice. Or did she? A small voice whispered in her mind, you could run, take nothing, tell Noah the truth, ask for his protection from Mortessa. But that was fantasy. Noah wouldn't protect someone who'd deceived him. And Mortessa would find her, would make the punishment worse than death. No. She had to steal the amulet and run. It was the only option. She made her way to Noah's study, each step feeling heavier. The guards let her pass. She entered to find Noah standing by the window, backlit by moonlight. He turned when she entered, and his smile was devastating. Serene, I was hoping you'd come. I almost didn't, she said honestly. Why not? Because this is getting complicated. Noah crossed to her. Is complicated bad? It can be. He stopped close enough that she could feel his warmth, but not touching. Or it can be the beginning of something real. Elani's resolve wavered. She should execute her plan, should distract him and steal the amulet. But instead she found herself saying, what if I'm not who you think I am? What if you are exactly who I think, someone brave and honest who survived hell and is still standing? Noah reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek. I know you're hiding things. I know your name probably isn't Serene. I don't care. You should care. Why? Because, she struggled for words, because when you find out the truth, you'll hate me. Try me, Noah said quietly. Tell me the truth, and let me prove you wrong. The offer hung between them. Elani stood at a crossroads. She could confess everything: the disguise, Mortessa, the mission. Could throw herself on Noah's mercy and hope he'd protect her, or she could stick to the plan, take the amulet and run. Before she could decide, a commotion outside the door made them both turn. Julian's voice rang through the corridor. "Search the west wing. The old herbalist hasn't been in her room since sunset. Find her." Panic flooded through Elani. They were searching for her. Would find her room empty. Would start asking questions she couldn't answer. "What's happening?" Noah moved toward the door. "I have to go," Elani said desperately. Noah turned back to her. "What's wrong?" She couldn't explain. Couldn't tell him that the guards were searching for a version of her that didn't exist right now. "I'm sorry. For everything." She ran. Noah called after her, but she didn't stop. She raced through the corridors, avoiding the main hallways where guards would be searching. She made it back to her room just as dawn began to lighten the sky. The transformation reclaimed her. Youth drained away, age settled over her, and within moments she was the old woman again, sitting on her bed, breathing hard. A knock at her door. "Elani, are you in there?" Julian's voice. She opened the door, feigning confusion. "Yes? What's wrong?" Julian studied her with sharp eyes. "Where were you earlier this evening?" "Here, sleeping." She made her voice quaver. "Why? What's happened?" "There was a report you weren't in your room." "I was. Perhaps whoever checked didn't knock loudly enough. I'm a heavy sleeper." Julian didn't look convinced, but he had no proof. "Stay in your room unless you're needed for work. There's a security concern." "Of course," Elani said meekly. After he left, she sat on her bed, shaking. That had been too close. The deception was unraveling. She needed to act. But when she thought about stealing from Noah, about betraying him, her chest constricted with pain. A soft tapping at her window made her turn. A crow sat on the sill, Mortessa's message tied to its leg. Elani opened it with trembling hands. "Tonight. Complete the mission tonight, or I'm coming for you myself, and when I do, you'll beg for the quick death Vorin offered. The spell will become permanent, but that will be the least of your torments. Don't fail me, daughter." The endearment at the end made it worse. Mortessa's twisted love and cruel demands braided together until Elani couldn't separate them. She had no choice left. Tonight, she'd steal the amulet. Tonight, she'd destroy whatever was growing between her and Noah. Tonight, she'd become exactly what Mortessa wanted her to be. A useful tool with no will of her own, unless she did something incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. Unless she told Noah the truth. Chapter 8. That evening, Noah requested her presence in his study. The formal summons came through Berta, who looked worried. "The king wants to see you, and the beta will be there too." Elani's stomach dropped. This was it. Somehow, they'd discovered the truth. She made her way to the study on legs that felt like they'd collapse. The guards let her in without a word. Inside, Noah stood by his desk while Julian loomed near the window, arms crossed. "Elani," Noah said gently. "Please sit." She remained standing. "What's this about, Your Majesty?" Julian spoke first. "We've been investigating your background. There are inconsistencies. I'm a traveling herbalist. I have no permanent home." "That much appears true," Julian said. "But we've uncovered something interesting. 8 years ago, Queen Elani of Silver Peak disappeared the night before her execution. She was accused of treasury theft by Alpha Vorin. There was a massive search, but she vanished completely, almost like magic." Elani's blood turned to ice. "That's a tragic story," she managed. "But what does it have to do with me?" "You share a name. You appeared from nowhere with skills suited to nobility. And there have been rumors for years about Vorin's corruption. about him framing his mate to cover his crimes. Julian stepped forward. Are you Queen Elani of Silver Peak? I'm an old woman. Do I look like a queen to you? You might, Julian said quietly, if someone used magic to change your appearance. Noah had been silent through this exchange, his face unreadable. Now he spoke. Julian, leave us. Your Majesty, that's an order. Julian left, though his expression promised this wasn't over. The door closed, leaving Elani alone with Noah. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Noah walked to his desk and picked up the crystalline amulet. This belonged to my mate. It was her bonding gift to me, but it's more than sentimental. It holds powerful magic, the kind that can break curses and spells. Elani couldn't speak, couldn't move. A witch came to me last week, Noah continued, offered to examine it, said she sensed dark magic nearby that needed breaking. I refused. He turned to face her. But then I started noticing things, how your voice sometimes slipped, how you knew details about court life no traveling herbalist would know, how you and Serene never appeared in the same place at the same time. I don't stop. Noah's voice was gentle but firm. No more lies, please. Elani felt the fight drain out of her. How long have you known? Suspected for days. Julian's investigation confirmed it. The question is why. Noah set the amulet down. Why are you here disguised as an old woman? Are you here to hurt me? No. The word burst from her. I would never. She stopped, because that was a lie too. She'd been planning to hurt him, to steal from him. Then tell me the truth, all of it. And standing there, trapped by his patient gaze, by the kindness he'd shown her despite knowing she was deceiving him, Elani broke. There's a witch named Mortessa, she said, voice cracking. She saved me the night I was supposed to be executed. Cast a spell that makes me look old during the day, only at night, for 6 hours. Do I become myself again? In exchange, I serve her, forever. I have no choice. Why are you here? Elani's hand shook. She sent me to steal your mate's amulet. I've been trying to get close enough to find the right moment. That's why I came to your study as Serene, to distract you while I took it. The words fell like stones between them. Noah's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes dimmed. I see, he said quietly. But I couldn't do it. Elani rushed forward. Every night I came to you, I told myself I'd steal it, but I couldn't, because you were kind, because you saw me, because for the first time in 8 years, someone treated me like I mattered. Tears streamed down her weathered face. I know I betrayed your trust. I know I'm exactly what you probably think, a liar and a thief. But I need you to know that what happened between us, those conversations, those moments, they were real. My feelings are real. Your feelings, Noah said. As Serene, you mean. As myself. Both versions are me. The old woman is my disguise, but the person you talked to, the one who sat with you at midnight, that was real. Noah was silent for a long moment. Mortessa sent you to steal from me. What happens if you fail? She'll make the spell permanent. I'll be trapped as an old woman forever, even during those 6 hours, and she'll... Elani couldn't continue. She'll punish you. Yes. Noah picked up the amulet again, studying it in the candlelight. This can break her spell, permanently. You'd be free. Hope flared in Elani's chest, painful and bright. You'd do that? After everything I've done? Noah looked at her with those dark, intense eyes. I've been hurt before, Elani. Betrayed by people I trusted. Lily's death wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated by an alpha I considered a friend, who wanted to weaken my borders. I know what betrayal feels like. The hope in her chest withered. I understand, I'll leave. I'm not finished. Noah moved closer. I also know what desperation looks like, what survival looks like. You are in an impossible situation, with a monster controlling you through magic and threats. The fact that you couldn't go through with stealing from me, despite the consequences you'll face, tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. Elani's breath caught. You're not angry. I'm hurt, Noah said honestly. The deception hurts, but I understand it. And I'm offering you a choice. He held up the amulet. Break free from Mortessa. Let me help you. Why would you help me after what I've done? Noah reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her wrinkled hand in his. Because I see you, Elani, both versions of you, the strong woman who survived 8 years of servitude, the lonely person who sat with me at midnight, the herbalist who showed me kindness. All of it is you, and all of it matters to me. The tears came harder. I don't deserve your help. Deserve has nothing to do with it. Noah's grip on her hand tightened. I care about you. Whether you look like this or like Serene, I care, and I won't let Mortessa hurt you anymore. Before Elani could respond, the room went cold. Shadows gathered in the corners, coalescing into a familiar form. Mortessa materialized, her beautiful face twisted with rage. How touching! The foolish Alpha thinks he can save you. Noah immediately stepped in front of Elani, putting himself between her and the witch. Leave my castle. Mortessa laughed. You think your authority matters to me? I've been practicing magic since before your grandmother was born. Her gaze shifted to Elani. My daughter. My clever, treacherous daughter, you were going to betray me. I couldn't do it, Elani whispered. I couldn't hurt him. Because you're weak, Mortessa's voice was vicious. I saved you. I gave you purpose. And this is how you repay me? By falling for another Alpha who'll use you and discard you? She's not weak, Noah said, his voice carrying Alpha command. And I won't discard her. Won't you? Mortessa's smile was cruel. You're grieving your perfect mate. Elani is just a distraction until you find someone worthy. Do you really think a twice-rejected Omega is what an Alpha King would choose? The words hit their mark. Elani flinched, old wounds tearing open. But Noah's response was immediate. Lily was perfect for me, and so is Elani. Not because she's flawless, but because she's real, because she's survived and stayed kind, because when I talk to her, I feel alive again. That's not a distraction. That's the beginning of something I didn't think I'd ever find twice. Elani's heart stopped. Was he saying, how disgustingly sentimental? Mortessa spat. None of it matters. Elani belongs to me. The spell binds her to my will. She raised her hand, and dark magic crackled around her fingers. And if I can't have her loyalty, I'll have her suffering. The spell shot toward Elani. Noah moved faster than she'd thought possible, yanking her behind him. The magic struck his shoulder, and he grunted in pain but didn't fall. Enough! Noah's voice rang with power. He held up the amulet, and it blazed with brilliant light. This amulet was blessed by a high priestess, forged with love and sacrifice. It breaks dark magic. It breaks curses. He looked back at Elani. Do you consent to being freed from Mortessa's spell? Yes, Elani breathed. Noah brought the amulet forward, pressing it against her chest. Light exploded through the room, so bright Elani had to close her eyes. She felt Mortessa's spell tearing away like chains breaking, felt the magic that had bound her for 8 years shatter. When the light faded, Elani looked down at her hands. They were young, smooth and unlined, and hers. The disguise was gone. not just temporarily, but completely. Mortessa shrieked with rage. "You've destroyed my work. Years of magic broken." "Your work was imprisonment," Noah said. "Now it's over. Leave, or I'll have every guard in this castle hunt you down." "This isn't finished," Mortessa hissed, but she was already fading. "You haven't won, daughter. You've just traded one cage for another. Let's see how long this alpha's affection lasts when he sees your weakness, your neediness, your complete lack of worth." Then she was gone, leaving only the scent of bitter herbs. Silence filled the study. Elani stood there, in her true form, trembling. She looked at Noah, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're bleeding," she said, noticing the wound on his shoulder where Mortessa's magic had struck. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing. You took that from me." Noah smiled slightly. "I told you I care about you. I meant it." Elani touched her face, still marveling at the feel of her true skin. "I don't know what to do now. I've been someone else for so long." "You be yourself," Noah said gently. "That's all you need to do." "And what if Mortessa was right? What if I'm not worth—" Noah cut her off by taking her face in his hands. "She was wrong about everything. You're brave and resilient and beautiful, inside and out. Don't let her poison infect you." Elani looked up at him through tears. "You barely know me." "I know enough, and I'd like to learn more, if you'll let me." The offer hung between them. Freedom and possibility and terror all braided together. "I'm scared," Elani admitted. "So am I," Noah said, "but we can be scared together." And standing there in his study, her true face finally revealed, Elani made another choice, not born from desperation or coercion, but from genuine want. She rose on her toes and kissed him. Noah made a sound of surprise, then his arms came around her, pulling her close. The kiss was gentle and searching, full of promise rather than demand. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I don't know what happens next," Elani whispered. "Neither do I," Noah admitted. "But we'll figure it out. It should have been enough." The spell broken, Mortessa banished, Noah offering his support. But outside the study window, a crow watched from the shadows. And far away, in a darkened cottage, Mortessa was already planning her revenge. Chapter 9. Elani woke in her small room the next morning and spent a full minute staring at her hands in the sunlight. Still young, still smooth, still real. The spell was broken. She was free. The joy should have been pure, but it was tangled with fear. Mortessa's final words echoed, "This isn't finished." A knock at her door made her jump. Berta's voice came through. "Elani, the king requests your presence." She dressed carefully in one of the borrowed gowns, suddenly self-conscious. Everyone who'd known her as the old herbalist would now see her true form. There would be questions, shock, possibly fear. When she opened the door, Berta's eyes went wide. "Saints above, you're young." "It's a long story. I should say so." Berta's shock transformed into wonder. "The king said you'd been cursed. Is that true?" "Yes. He broke the spell last night." Berta reached out tentatively and touched Elani's face. "You poor dear. All this time you were hiding like this. Come. The king is waiting for you in the garden." Elani followed her through the castle, aware of every stare, every whispered conversation. Staff members she'd worked alongside for weeks gaped at her transformation. Noah waited in the private garden, and when he turned at her approach, his smile was warm. "Elani, how did you sleep?" "I barely did, kept checking to make sure the spell hadn't returned." "It won't. The amulet's magic is permanent." He gestured for her to walk with him, and Berta discreetly withdrew. I wanted to talk to you about what comes next. Anxiety spiked. What comes next? Noah stopped beside a fountain, his expression serious. Julian's investigation uncovered information about Voren. The treasury theft wasn't the only crime he committed. He's been embezzling from allied pacts, manipulating trade agreements, even orchestrating raids on his own borders to justify military expansion. Elani's breath caught. He's worse than I thought. Much worse. And you're the key witness to his crimes. If you're willing to testify, we can bring him to justice. Testify? The word made her stomach churn. That would mean facing him. Yes, it would be difficult and painful, but it would also mean clearing your name, reclaiming what he took from you. Noah touched her arm gently. I won't force you. This is your choice. Elani thought about it, about 8 years of hiding, about the Omega Queen who'd been publicly destroyed, about all the other people Voren might hurt if no one stopped him. I'll do it, she said, but I need time to prepare. Of course, the tribunal won't convene for a month. That gives you time to remember details, to gather your strength. Noah's hand slid down to take hers, and you won't be alone. I'll be with you through all of it. The promise warmed her, but doubt crept in. Why are you doing this? Helping me so much? Noah pulled her to face him fully. Because I meant what I said last night. I care about you, Elani. Not out of pity, not out of obligation. Because in those midnight conversations, in those moments of honesty, I felt something I thought I'd never feel again. Connection. Hope, the possibility of love. Love? Elani's voice came out small. That's a strong word, is it? We've shared more honesty in a few weeks than many couples share in years. Noah cupped her face. I know it's fast. I know you're still healing from what Voren did. I'm not asking you to rush into anything. I'm just asking for permission to see where this goes. Elani searched his face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation, but all she saw was sincerity and tenderness. I'm broken, she warned him. I have nightmares. I panic sometimes. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust another alpha. I'm broken too, Noah said quietly. I still write letters to a mate who can't answer. I have scars that won't heal. We can be broken together and help each other mend. The offer was everything Elani had once dreamed of. A partner who saw her wounds and didn't run, who offered support without demanding perfection. Okay, she whispered. We can try. Noah's smile was radiant. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her eyes sting with tears. But even as she melted into him, a shadow passed overhead. A crow, circling the garden, watching. The next weeks passed in a strange mixture of happiness and preparation. Elani spent her days recounting everything she knew about Voren's crimes to Julian and the court scholars. The details were painful to revisit. How she'd discovered the discrepancies in the treasury accounts. How Voren had twisted her discovery into evidence against her. How he'd orchestrated her public humiliation. But Noah was there through all of it, holding her hand during difficult recollections, comforting her when the memories became too much, reminding her that she was strong enough to face this. And at night, they had their conversations, not hidden in his study at midnight anymore, but open and acknowledged. They talked about their pasts, their fears, their hopes for the future. Noah told her about Lily, not with the raw grief of before, but with gentle remembrance. Elani told him about her life before Voren, about the young Omega who'd believed in love and fairness. They were learning each other, building something genuine on a foundation of shared vulnerability. But Mortessa's presence lurked at the edges. Crows appeared frequently at Elani's window, bearing no messages, but simply watching. Staff reported seeing a hooded figure near the castle walls at night. Dark magic prickled in the air occasionally, making Elani's skin crawl. "She's planning something," Elani told Noah one evening. "I can feel it." Noah had increased security, brought in magical wards, but he couldn't completely banish the threat. "Let her plan. We'll be ready." 3 weeks into her preparation, a messenger arrived with news. Alpha Vorin had been summoned to the tribunal. He'd sent a response claiming his innocence and demanding that his delusional former mate be arrested for slander. "He's not going to come quietly," Julian warned. "During a strategy meeting, he'll bring his full military force and challenge the tribunal's authority." "Let him try," Noah said. "We have witnesses, documentation, proof of his crimes. Truth is on our side." Elani wasn't so certain. She'd seen Vorin manipulate entire courts. He was charismatic and clever, skilled at twisting facts to serve his narrative. That night, unable to sleep, she wandered to the castle library. She found Noah there, reading by candlelight. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, setting his book aside. "Too many thoughts." Elani sat beside him. "What if we're not prepared enough? What if he wins?" "Then we try again. We keep fighting until justice comes." Noah pulled her close. "But I don't think he'll win. He spent years building his power on lies. We're exposing those lies. Truth is stronger than deception." "I hope you're right." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Noah spoke quietly. "I've been thinking about the future, about what comes after the tribunal." "What about it?" "I'd like you to stay here, not as a servant or a guest, but as more." Noah turned to face her. "I know it's soon. I know you need time to heal and find yourself. But I want you to know that when you're ready, I'd like to explore a real bond with you. A mating built on choice and respect, not arrangement or obligation." Elani's heart raced. "You'd want that? With me?" "I've wanted it since those midnight conversations when you were serene." Noah smiled. "Actually, I think I started wanting it when you were the old herbalist telling me that grief and strength weren't opposites. That was the real me. Both versions. I know. And I want all of you, Elani. Your strength and your vulnerability. Your past and your future. If you'll have me." Elani thought about it. About the mate bond she'd had with Vorin. Cold and empty and destructive. About what a bond with Noah might be. Warm and supportive and built on genuine connection. "I'm terrified," she admitted, "of making the same mistake, of trusting and being betrayed again. I can't promise I'll never hurt you. People in relationships hurt each other sometimes, even with good intentions." Noah took her hands. "But I can promise I'll never deliberately betray you, never manipulate or diminish you, never make you feel like you're not enough. You're more than enough, Elani. You always have been." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I need time to face Vorin, to clear my name, to figure out who I am without the disguise and the mission. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." They kissed then, slow and deep, a promise of what might be when they were both ready. But outside the library window, Mortessa watched from the shadows, her expression murderous. She'd given Elani everything, saved her life, given her purpose, treated her as a daughter. And this was her reward: betrayal, rejection, replacement with a new father figure who offered everything Mortessa couldn't. Acceptance without cruelty, love without conditions. It was unbearable, and it would not stand. Chapter 10. The day of the tribunal arrived with ominous gray skies. Elani dressed in formal attire, a simple but elegant gown in deep blue, and tried to control her shaking hands. Noah found her in her room, pacing. "You don't have to do this. We can postpone." "No." Elani's voice was firm despite her fear. "I need to face him, to reclaim what was stolen from me, to show him he didn't break me." Noah stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. "You're the bravest person I know." She breathed in his scent, letting it steady her. "I'm terrified." Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. He pulled back to look at her. "I'll be right there with you, every moment." The tribunal was held in the Great Hall, packed with representatives from neighboring packs, neutral arbiters, and witnesses. Elani's heart pounded as she entered with Noah at her side. And there, at the defendant's table, sat Voren. He looked exactly as she remembered, handsome and cold, his dark eyes sweeping the room with calculated arrogance. When his gaze landed on her, something flickered across his face. Surprise, then recognition, then contempt. "So the little Omega survived," he said, loud enough for nearby people to hear. "I should have made sure you were dead before you left that cell." The admission sent gasps through the hall. Julian, acting as prosecutor, stepped forward. "Alpha Voren, you stand accused of embezzlement, fraud, false accusation, and attempted murder. How do you plead?" "Not guilty to all charges." Voren's voice dripped disdain. "This is a witch hunt orchestrated by a rejected mate who can't accept that she was worthless." Elani felt Noah tense beside her, but she placed a hand on his arm. "I can handle this." The tribunal proceeded with testimonies. Julian presented the treasury records showing systematic theft. Witnesses from Voren's pack testified about his manipulation and cruelty. A forensics expert explained how the signatures on the withdrawal authorizations had been forged to match Elani's handwriting. Through it all, Voren remained smug, deflecting with charm and half-truths. Then it was Elani's turn to testify. She stood, legs shaking, and made her way to the witness stand, every eye in the hall fixed on her. Voren's gaze was particularly intense, filled with the promise of destruction. "State your name," the head arbiter said. "Elani, formerly Queen of Silver Peak. Tell us what happened 8 years ago." Elani took a breath and began. She described her mating to Voren, the 3 years of neglect and emotional cruelty, how she'd discovered the treasury discrepancies, how she'd brought them to Voren, thinking he'd want to investigate. "What was his response?" the arbiter asked. "He told me he'd handle it. 2 weeks later, at the Harvest Moon celebration, he publicly rejected me and accused me of the very crimes I'd uncovered." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. "He claimed I was barren and unfaithful, that I'd stolen from the pack treasury. He had me arrested and sentenced to execution without a fair trial." "These are lies." Voren surged to his feet. "She's a scorned woman making up stories. Sit down," the head arbiter commanded. "You'll have your chance to speak." Elani continued, describing her escape with Mortessa's help, the 8 years of hiding. When she finished, the arbiter asked, "Why did Alpha Voren frame you?" "Because I'd discovered his embezzlement. I was the only one who'd seen the records, who knew what he'd done. He needed me silenced, and he used the mate bond's rejection as an opportunity to destroy my credibility completely. Who would believe a rejected, disgraced Omega over a powerful Alpha?" The logic was clear, and murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Voren's defense was predictable. He claimed Elani was mentally unstable, that her accusations were delusional, that he'd rejected her out of necessity because she truly was barren and a thief. But his smugness had cracked. The evidence was overwhelming, and the tribunal's expressions showed they weren't convinced. After hours of testimony and deliberation, the head arbiter stood, We find Alpha Vorin guilty of all charges. He is stripped of his title and territory. He will serve 20 years imprisonment and make full restitution to those he's harmed. Vorin's facade shattered. You can't do this. I'm an alpha. I have rights. You forfeited those rights when you betrayed your pack and your mate. The Arbiter's voice was steel. Take him away. Guards moved forward and Vorin's eyes fixed on Elani with pure hatred. This isn't over. You'll pay for this, you worthless. Noah moved between them, his alpha presence radiating power. Threaten her again, and imprisonment will be the least of your concerns. Vorin was dragged away, still shouting threats and curses. The hall erupted in conversation. Several pack leaders approached Elani, offering apologies for believing Vorin's lies, expressing admiration for her courage. The head arbiter formally cleared her name and restored her title, though Elani quietly declined it. She had no desire to return to Silver Peak or reclaim a position tied to so much pain. When the hall finally cleared, Elani found herself alone with Noah in a side room. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the testimony drained away, leaving her shaking. It's over, Noah said softly, pulling her into his arms. He can't hurt you anymore. I know. Elani's voice broke. I thought I'd feel more. Triumph maybe, or satisfaction, but I just feel empty. Justice doesn't always bring the closure we expect, but it matters. You stood up to him. You won. Elani buried her face in Noah's chest. Thank you for being there. Always. They stood like that for a long moment, two people who'd survived their own betrayals, holding each other in the aftermath of justice finally served. But outside, Mortessa watched through the window, her rage building to a crescendo. Elani had everything now: freedom, vindication, a powerful alpha who loved her, while Mortessa had nothing, lost her tool, lost her daughter, lost her revenge. It was unacceptable, and tonight she would take it all away. Chapter 11. The celebration that night was subdued but meaningful. Noah's court held a small gathering to honor Elani's courage and the successful tribunal. She moved through it in a daze, accepting congratulations and kind words, but feeling disconnected from the joy around her. You're quiet, Noah observed, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the kingdom. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Elani leaned against the railing. Vorin is imprisoned. The spell is broken. My name is cleared. It feels too good to be real. Maybe you're not used to things going right. Maybe. She looked up at him. Or maybe I'm waiting for Mortessa to make her move. She's been too quiet. Noah's expression grew serious. I've had guards patrolling specifically for signs of her. The wards are holding. She can't enter the castle. She doesn't need to enter. She's powerful, Noah, and she's angry. I betrayed her, chose you over her. She won't let that stand. Before Noah could respond, the temperature dropped. Frost spread across the balcony railing. The celebration sounds from inside went abruptly silent. She's here, Elani whispered. They rushed inside to find the great hall transformed. Vines of dark magic crawled up the walls. The guests stood frozen, trapped in some kind of paralysis spell, and in the center of it all stood Mortessa, more terrifying than Elani had ever seen her. My daughter, the witch said, her voice carrying unnatural resonance. Did you think you could abandon me without consequences? Noah immediately stepped in front of Elani, but Mortessa laughed. How predictable. The alpha protecting his prize, but you don't understand what you've taken from me. I took nothing, Noah said firmly. Elani chose freedom. That was her right. Her right? Mortessa's voice rose. I gave her life, saved her from execution. gave her purpose when she was nothing. She belonged to me. She belongs to herself, Elani said, stepping out from behind Noah. I'm grateful you saved me, Mortessa, but servitude isn't the same as love. Control isn't the same as care. I loved you. The witch's composure cracked, like the daughter I never had. I protected you, taught you, made you strong, and you repaid me with betrayal, just like he did, just like every weak, pathetic person I've ever cared for. Understanding dawned on Elani. This isn't about me, is it? It's about the alpha who rejected you. You wanted to make me into your perfect revenge, a woman who'd learned to hate alphas, to use them, to never be weak enough to trust again. But I didn't become that. I healed instead. Healed? Mortessa spat. You've replaced one cage with another. This alpha will use you just like Vorin did, and when he's done, he'll discard you. But you won't have me to save you next time. I don't need saving, Elani said quietly. I needed freedom, and now I have it. Mortessa's expression twisted with rage and grief. Then you'll die with it. Dark magic exploded from her hands, aimed directly at Elani. Noah moved to intercept, but Elani was faster. She'd spent 8 years learning Mortessa's techniques, understanding her magic. She threw up a shield, not of magic, but of pure willpower, and the protective wards Noah had taught her to channel. The magic deflected, exploding against the walls. The frozen guests began to move again as Mortessa's concentration broke. You learned palace magic, Mortessa said, genuine surprise in her voice. You've been training. I've been preparing, Elani corrected. I knew you'd come, and I knew I'd have to face you, not as your servant, but as your equal. Julian and the guards rushed in, but Noah held up a hand. This is Elani's fight. Mortessa and Elani circled each other. The witch's magic crackled with destructive power. Elani's wards glowed with protective light. I don't want to hurt you, Elani said. You saved my life. That meant something, but not enough to stay, because staying meant dying inside, slowly, piece by piece, until nothing of me remained. Elani's voice carried both compassion and steel. You wanted me to be strong, Mortessa, strong enough to survive, to fight back, to refuse to be a victim. I am. I'm strong enough to refuse your control, too. The words struck deeper than any magical attack. Mortessa's expression flickered with something that might have been understanding, or grief, or both. You were supposed to be different, the witch whispered. Supposed to prove that not everyone leaves. I didn't leave because you weren't enough. I left because your love came with chains. Real love doesn't require servitude. Mortessa raised her hands, magic building for a final, devastating attack. But her hands trembled. Tears streaked down her face. I don't know how to love without controlling, without protecting so fiercely it becomes imprisonment. I know, Elani said gently. That's why you need to let me go. For a long moment, Mortessa stood there, magic swirling around her, caught between rage and heartbreak. Then, slowly, the magic dissipated. I can't kill you, she said, voice breaking. I've tried to hate you, to see you as just another betrayer, but you're still my daughter, my foolish, stubborn, brave daughter. Elani stepped forward cautiously. Then stop trying to cage me. Let me be free and still love you. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You want to maintain contact after everything? You saved my life, taught me to survive. Those years weren't all cruelty. Elani stopped a few feet away. You were the only family I had. I don't want to lose that completely, but it has to be on different terms. No servitude, no control, just connection, if you can accept that. Mortessa looked at Noah. And you? You'd allow her to maintain a relationship with a dark witch who tried to kill you both? If that's what Elani wants, Noah said without hesitation, her choices are her own. The witch laughed bitterly. A novel concept. She turned, back to Elani. I'll leave, but I'm keeping the cottage. If you want to visit, you know where to find me. Don't expect me to be soft or gentle. That's not who I am. I know. I wouldn't expect you to change completely. Just try to remember that love doesn't require chains. Mortessa nodded once, then began to fade. Before she disappeared completely, she spoke one last time. Don't make me regret saving you, daughter. Live well, be strong. And if that alpha ever hurts you, she glanced at Noah with threat clear in her eyes. I'll return, and no magic will save him. Then she was gone, leaving only the scent of bitter herbs. The hall erupted in chaos. Guests exclaiming, guards checking for damage, Julian demanding explanations. But Elani stood still, Noah's arm around her waist, feeling both drained and somehow lighter. That was dangerous, Noah said quietly, offering her continued connection. I know, but she's complicated. Not just evil, not just kind, both tangled together. Rejecting her completely would have made her more dangerous. This way, maybe. Elani trailed off. Maybe she'll heal too, Noah finished. You're generous. Some would say too generous. Some would say mercy is a strength, not a weakness. Noah smiled and kissed her temple. That's why I love you. The words hung in the air. Elani looked up at him, seeing the truth in his eyes. You love me? I've loved you since those midnight conversations. I just wanted to wait for the right moment to say it. Noah cupped her face. Is this the right moment? Or is it too soon after? Elani cut him off with a kiss. When they pulled apart, she whispered, I love you too. Both versions of me love you. The old woman you showed kindness to, the young woman you saw. All of me loves all of you. Around them, the court began to settle. The crisis had passed, but for Elani and Noah, standing in the center of the great hall holding each other, something new was beginning. Something real, something chosen, something that had been earned through honesty and survival, and the courage to trust, despite everything that had tried to break them. Chapter 12. 3 months later, Elani stood at her window watching the sunrise paint the kingdom in gold and rose. She'd moved into chambers adjacent to Noah's, not as a mate yet, but as a partner taking things slowly, building their relationship on solid ground. The nightmares had lessened. She still woke sometimes in a panic, expecting to find herself back in the dungeon or trapped as the old woman. But Noah was always there, holding her, reminding her she was safe and free. They'd spent the months learning each other beyond those intense midnight conversations, the mundane details of daily life, how Noah hummed while he worked, how Elani sorted herbs obsessively when stressed, his tendency to work too late, her habit of collecting flowers from the garden, the way they moved around each other in comfortable silence, the way their conversations deepened as barriers fell away. Julian had warmed to her, though he remained protective of Noah. The court had accepted her presence with surprising ease, and Elani had begun finding her own purpose, not as queen, not as servant, but as herself. She'd established a healing center in the city, using her skills to help others. It gave her meaning beyond relationship or title. And once, she'd returned to Mortessa's cottage. The witch had been civil, almost warm in her prickly way. They'd had tea and talked carefully around the hurt between them. Mortessa was still manipulative, still bitter about the past. But she'd also seemed genuinely glad to see Elani, had asked about her life with something approaching maternal interest. It wasn't healed, might never be completely, but it was something other than either servitude or total rejection. A third option neither had known existed. Now, as Elani watched the sunrise, she heard Noah's door open. He appeared beside her, sleep rumpled and beautiful. "You're up early, Soma," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts. Good thoughts or bad ones?" "Good, actually." Elani leaned back against him. "I was thinking about how different my life is now, how different I am." "How so?" "A year ago, I was trapped in servitude, hiding behind a disguise, believing I was worthless because Vorin had convinced me I was. Now," she gestured at the kingdom, "now I'm free. I have purpose. I have people who care about me. I have you." Noah kissed the top of her head. "You always had worth. You just needed freedom to recognize it. I needed you to help me see it. We helped each other. I was drowning in grief, convinced I'd never feel alive again. You changed that." Noah turned her to face him. "Which brings me to something I've been wanting to ask." Elani's heart rate increased. "What?" Noah knelt, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, not ostentatious but beautiful, with a stone that glowed faintly with protective magic. "I know we've talked about taking things slowly, and we can continue to do that. But I want you to know my intentions. I want to mate with you, Elani. Not because of politics or obligation, but because I love you, because you make me a better alpha and a better person, because I want to spend my life beside you, building something real together." He looked up at her with those dark, honest eyes. "Will you consider accepting my offer? When you're ready, however long that takes." Elani's eyes filled with tears. A year ago, this would have terrified her. The idea of binding herself to another alpha, of trusting that completely, would have been impossible. But Noah had earned that trust, day by day, moment by moment, through patience and honesty and respect. "Yes," she said. "Not someday. Yes, now. I'm ready." Noah's expression transformed with joy and surprise. "Are you sure? I've spent 8 years waiting to reclaim my life. I don't want to wait anymore." Elani pulled him to his feet. "I know what I want. I want you. I want this. I want to choose my own future, and I choose you." Noah slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted of promise and hope. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying and laughing at once. "We should tell people," Noah said. "Make it official." "We should. But first," Elani smiled, "first let's just have this moment. Just us watching the sunrise, knowing we found each other against impossible odds." They stood at the window, arms around each other, watching the sun climb higher. Two broken people who'd helped each other heal. Two lonely souls who'd found connection in midnight conversations and honest vulnerability. The path ahead wouldn't be perfect. Elani would still have hard days, still struggle with the trauma Vorin had inflicted. Noah would still grieve Lily, still carry the weight of leadership, but they'd face it together, as partners who'd chosen each other freely. That evening, they announced their engagement to the court. The celebration was joyous, music and laughter filling the great hall that had once been frozen by Mortessa's magic. Julian gave a surprisingly heartfelt speech about second chances. Berta cried happy tears and claimed she'd known all along. Even the formal representatives from other packs offered genuine congratulations. As the celebration wound down, Elani found herself on the balcony again, looking out at the kingdom that had become home. A familiar presence materialized beside her. Mortessa, keeping to the shadows. "I heard the news," the witch said. "You're mating the Alpha King." Elani tensed, unsure what to expect. Yes. Are you happy? The question surprised her. I am genuinely happy. Mortessa was quiet for a moment. Then awkwardly, she reached out and touched Elani's shoulder. Good. That's good. She started to fade. I suppose congratulations are in order. Mortessa, Elani called out. Thank you for coming. It means something. The witch paused, half visible. Don't make me regret showing up, and don't you dare name your firstborn after me. I hate children. Then she was gone, but Elani was smiling. Noah appeared beside her. Was that Mortessa? She came to congratulate us, in her way. That's progress, I suppose. Noah pulled Elani close. Are you ready for this? The mating ceremony, being officially bonded to me. All of it. Elani thought about it. About the young Omega who'd been rejected and destroyed. About the old woman who'd survived through servitude. About the journey from that dungeon cell to this balcony, from worthlessness to love. I'm ready, she said, for all of it. The mating ceremony happened a month later under a full moon. It was intimate, just close friends and trusted court members. No political maneuvering, no arranged spectacle, just two people choosing each other. When the pack elder bound their wrists with the ceremonial cord, Elani felt the mate bond snap into place. But this time, it was warm and strong and mutual, a connection between equals, built on choice and respect. I, Noah, take you, Elani, as my mate and partner. I promise to see you, value you, and stand beside you through whatever comes. Your strength is my strength. Your happiness is my joy. Your choices are your own, always. Elani's voice was steady as she replied. I, Elani, take you, Noah, as my mate and partner. I promise to trust you, support you, and build a life with you based on honesty and love. Your grief is honored. Your heart is safe with me. Your tomorrow is ours to create together. When the elder declared them bonded, the witnesses erupted in cheers, but Elani only heard Noah's whispered words as he pulled her close. My queen, my mate, my choice, my king, my heart, my home. They kissed as the moon shone overhead, and Elani felt something she hadn't felt in 8 years. Complete. Not because Noah completed her, but because she'd completed herself, had reclaimed her identity, her power, her right to choose her own path. And she'd chosen this, chosen love over fear, chosen trust over self-protection, chosen to believe that not all alphas were Vorin, that not all bonds were cages, that she deserved happiness. Looking at her reflection later that night, her true face, her real self, unobscured by any disguise, Elani barely recognized the woman staring back, not because she'd changed physically, but because her eyes held something new. Hope, strength, peace. The rejected Omega who'd hidden as an old woman for 8 years was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd survived, healed, and dared to love again. A woman who'd been found, but more importantly, who'd found herself. Years later, when Elani told her story to those who needed hope, she always ended it the same way. I spent 8 years hiding from the alpha who rejected me, but in doing so, I found the alpha who saw me. More than that, I found myself, and that self-knowledge, that self-love, is the foundation everything else is built on. Because until you see your own worth, no one else's, recognition matters. But once you do, once you know who you are and what you deserve, everything changes. Love becomes choice instead of rescue. Partnership becomes collaboration instead of dominance. And life becomes something you actively create instead of something that simply happens to you. And every time she spoke those words with Noah beside her, Elani knew they were true. Not because the journey had been easy, but because she'd survived it. Not because the ending was perfect, but because it was earned. Not because fairy tales came true, but because real love, messy, complicated, built on honesty and effort, turned out to be better than any fantasy. The rejected Omega had hidden for 8 years, but in the end, she'd been found by the one person who mattered most, herself, and that made all the difference. The end did Elani's journey from rejection to redemption touch your heart? Hit that like button if you believe in second chances and true love earned, not given. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another powerful love story. And tell me in the comments, would you have trusted Noah after what Vorin did? Or would fear have kept you running? And what do we think of Mortessa? Drop your thoughts below.